Hello, everyone. My name is Greg Thomas, and welcome to the CX Green Room. According to a recent Genesys report, chatbots are the most commonly used customer experience technology, with 88% of CX leaders reporting that they've adopted them. And of those, 92% are AI-powered. But ever-advancing AI is transforming chatbots into virtual agents that will make today's chatbot seem clunky and cumbersome. In the not too distant future, these virtual agents will be able to understand and appropriately react to human emotions, delivering automated, empathetic experiences while handling an increasingly complex set of requests. We're joined in the CX Green Room today by Peter Graf, Senior Vice President of Strategy at Genesys, to discuss how virtual agents will transform experiences. Peter, welcome back to the Green Room.
Thanks, Greg. It's great to be back.
So let's just start with the current state of chatbots. Can you talk about the strengths and the limitations of current chatbots?
When we say current chatbots, we usually refer to those built using natural language understanding, where you actually have a human, a person, setting up a specific type of a dialogue. So that's a very important distinction that we'll get back later. When AI creates AI, this type of AI, a human actually describes, or I should more precisely say, charts out a dialogue that then can be automated. And what actually happens is you're extracting the intent. Let's say someone says, I want to book a flight. So you have to figure out that this is a booking intent. And then you're throwing a whole bunch of slots at people. So like, what's the destination? Which booking class do you want? What's the date of the flight, for example? And then you're filling these responses. And it's relatively rigid. It's predefined responses in a linear conversation flow. And so in essence, the bots today are a little bit like glorified forums. And that's the strength as well as the limitation. They work really well for simple stuff. Let's say you want to reset a password or something like that. Great. But often those type of very simple things can actually be done online already at a web page, for example. So usually people, when they contact the company, have a little bit more of a complicated issue. And that's where a lot of the frustration with today's chatbots is coming from, because that complexity is hard to build by a human through the creation of intents and filling slots. And so that's a little bit the limitation. So for some use cases, the chatbots of today are great. For many of the more, let's say, challenging ones, they're difficult. They don't understand human utterances that well. They're not actually imitating the best agents. They're just doing what they've been told, essentially, when the dialogue was designed by that human programmer.
Yeah.
So when you move to a virtual agent, the story changes quite a bit, because now we're using AI to create AI. I kind of alluded to this. What you're doing is you're not even programming the chatbot. You're actually telling the system what kind of bot you want. And then you're going and harvesting the best conversations of your best agents that actually have been successful in satisfying such demand. You're testing it using AI, and you're using AI to understand and to extract the right intent and to drive that conversation. Now, when I say AI in the context of virtual agents, I mean generative AI, which has much, much more powerful capabilities than the previous AI that we would say has been used for the more classic chatbots. So it can mimic human conversation, can handle much more complex queries and context switches, and it's actually tailored and personalized based on the behavior and the preferences of the people involved. And so these technologies have just become available, and people are expecting much, more containment, which means more conversations can be automated, much higher customer satisfaction, and the ability to solve more complicated issues with this more advanced technology.
Yeah, and this notion of being able to handle context shifts and sort of just the realities of regular speech is so exciting and fascinating.
Yeah.
So let me ask you about one of the really important aspects of delivering a good customer experience, which is empathy. Virtual agents promise more empathetic experiences than today's chatbots. But before we get into what that's going to look like, can you define what we even mean by empathy?
Yeah, I'd even go one step before that. Why is empathy important in the context of customer service, marketing, or sales? Usually, and this industry has been after this for decades, it's always been about the efficiency and effectiveness of how can you automate, how can you drive more conversations at a lower cost. And that's beneficial and it's important. But what people have kind of left out was how do I make my customers feel great so that they come back? Or in other words, how do I avoid making my customers mad so they churn? Because that has an impact on long-term growth. And the effect of that has long been underestimated. And so we've kind of embarked on the journey to really seize this opportunity and deliver against that blind spot. So that's why empathy is important in a customer context, because it's not just about saving money as you serve those customers through efficiency and effectiveness. It's about making sure the relationship is built and is successful over time. And that's how you keep customers. That's why empathy is important. Now, scientists believe that empathy created an evolutionary advantage that evolved in the context of parental care. So how do you understand, or when do you understand what your offspring needs, and how do you actually deliver against that? So it's deeply rooted in our brains. And as a human quality, empathy is something we are really great at. It's our ability to listen, to truly understand what somebody feels, and to react accordingly. And if you look at the scientific definition of empathy, which becomes important when you're trying to make systems more empathetic, there's really three angles to it. The first one is I know what you feel. It's called cognitive empathy, and it's the ability to understand the emotional state of another person. The second one, and that's very human, is I feel what you feel. It's what's called emotive empathy, and it's not a cognitive act. If you have a relationship with someone and they are sad, you are sad too. It comes from the way how our brain is wired. There's mirror neurons the same neurons fire regardless if you make the experience yourself or if someone that you like, that you have a relationship with, is going through that identical experience. So mirror neurons make us feel what somebody else feels, and that is a very human attribute. And then finally, it's what's called empathic action, which is our drive as a human to lend a hand, to help out. And when these three things come together, that's when we talk about empathy from a scientific perspective. So that's empathy, both from a let's say evolutionary perspective, from a context center perspective, from a human perspective, and how scientists see the three types of empathy overlap.
And it's hard to envision something that's really much more human than what you're describing, right? That ability to truly walk in another person's shoes.
And I always admired this, because humans empathize with like anything. We can empathize with a cartoon character, a toy. Like, it's amazing. The human ability to empathize seems to be almost unlimited.
I agree. I was working in my yard over the weekend, and I accidentally cut off a branch of a tree that I didn't mean to cut off, and I felt bad for the tree because I didn't. I'm sorry,
wouldn't go that far for myself. Yeah, there you go.
That's not where I meant to cut. Sorry, tree. So take that a little bit further, Peter. So what are people's expectations around empathy, sort of both from a human and then ultimately from an AI, as we seek as an industry to build those more empathetic systems that you were talking about earlier?
When I asked around between my friends, I asked them about how would you like to experience empathy in a customer scenario? And I felt the world was very much divided. There's some people who's like, I don't care. I just want to get things done. And there's others who say, oh, it's important how I feel. So we actually went out and created a representative sample of US consumers. And we asked 1,000 people really around what do you expect, and what would you expect from a human in terms of empathy, and what would you expect from an AI? And the results are quite interesting. So first of all, I was shocked. 76% of consumers say that experiencing empathy during a conversation with a company is at least as important as getting the issue resolved quickly. And so it's not just like, is empathy important? No, it's as important or more important as resolving an issue quickly for 76% of people. So I feel like there's a huge underestimation about how important it is. And then we were checking, does it make any difference if you're interacting with a human on the other side or an AI? And 83% of consumers want a human to show empathy, and 66% want an AI to show empathy. I was shocked about that too, because in my brain, I know an AI is just computation. Why would I expect empathy from a program? But people do. So in other words, for them, it's not so much is it a human or the AI. It's like I'm having a conversation with a business, and I want to be shown empathy during that conversation. And I don't care, to a larger degree, whether it's people or an AI. I mean, there's a difference between 83 and 66%, but it's not like, AI is falling off the cliff here. The majority of people want
they're both majorities, exactly.
So then we had the next question. It's like, okay, how exactly do you want empathy to show when you talk to a human or when you talk to an AI? And we asked 4 questions that are somewhat related to the definition of AI. So the first one is, would you like the human or the AI understand how you feel? The second is, would you like the human or AI to acknowledge your emotion? Would you like the AI to say, I understand you are angry? Or the human, I understand you're angry. And then the next one is, how would you like your emotion to be incorporated in the response you receive? So in other words, someone is really angry and the AI says, isn't it a great day today? That's not playing well, right? You're not incorporating the emotion of the customer in the response. So that was the third part. And the fourth part, which I found was the most interesting, would you like the human or the AI on the other side to express an emotion? Should the human say, I am sorry? Or should the AI say, I am sorry? Although everybody knows an AI will not be sorry. It's just a program. Yeah. And so we went through this, and again, we expected very different, answers. But there's 2 things that were surprising. The first one is the answers to these 4 questions, although they are really targeting very different angles of empathy, were incredibly consistent. Mm-hmm. So for humans, 90%, around 90% of humans agreed with these 4 statements. So in essence, they want empathy in all its forms. Mm-hmm. And 75% wanted AI agreed that they want AI to behave that way. So again, they're a bit more forgiving with AI. They don't expect as much with AI today, but it's been very, very consistent. And so, in summary, emotion is important, regardless with whom you're interacting. And empathy is expected in all its forms by the people that are interacting with your business. Even more importantly, the punishment is also the same. So if you really make a customer mad and frustrated and angry, 74% of people say they will consider stopping doing business with you if you are contacting or talking to a human, and 69% are going to do the same with an AI. So you really have to put the guards in your AI to make sure that the conversation is empathetic, just like you've been training your own people to be empathetic during those conversations.
Yeah, I mean, all of that really illustrates just how important delivering empathy and acting empathetically is when it comes to sort of working with other humans.
Yes, definitely.
So let's go back to this evolution that's happening for chatbots to virtual agents. So as this ability to handle more complex interactions, to understand these contextual shifts in a conversation, to generate truly relevant responses in the moment, it's already changing what chatbots can handle. What will it take for virtual agents to better understand emotions and nuance and handle these complex interactions with the kind of empathy that you were just describing?
Yeah. The funny thing is that humans are so tuned to truly grasp the full situation. We can point towards sarcasm and irony in no time. We read facial expressions. We understand tone of voice, speed, volume, all those additional channels of communication that are not the spoken word alone. It's truly everything that comes with it. And that is going to be a very, very important part of how empathy is understood, to truly read, which goes back to the first way of understanding how somebody feels. It's about understanding it in all different layers. It's the spoken word, it's the melody of the sentence, and so forth. And we're moving in different channels, and there's different ways of expressing these things. So let's say if you're in a digital conversation, in a chat or something like that, you would need to read emojis, just like you would read a facial expression in a video conversation, or how you would actually interpret the intonality and the melody of the sentence, the volume, the speed of the voice in a voice channel. So the fact that we have more and more of these rich channels, in that, we're sitting on this treasure trove of information, these virtual agents will tap into that to fully understand the emotional state, and not only fully understand the relevant context. So like what happened before, what is the actual problem? How would I solve this actual problem? That's clear, but that emotional part is going to be key. And both of them have to be taken into consideration when we use AI to determine what the next best action is now. One thing is to solve the problem and to be efficient, effective. The other thing is to understand the emotional state. And while you're solving the problem, improving the emotional state of the customer at the same time.
Yeah. It's kind of
that is where the magic will happen.
Right. I was thinking as you were talking, it's sort of both the what, solve my problem, and the how, do it in a way that's empathetic and sort of meets me where I am emotionally.
Yes. And then at that time, we talked about these three things. I understand how somebody feels. That's essentially what I described as the ability for AI to truly get every signal from an emotional perspective. I want to help is something that is inherent to the way how this AI has been set up. So yes, it's always going to want to help. The key is to feel what somebody feels. That could be a personal preference. So does the person want the AI to say, I'm sorry? Maybe that's something you can learn over time, and have it as a preference for that conversation with that customer. So there are some nuances there. But this is the way how all of these three dimensions of empathy essentially can be covered with an AI.
Yeah. So fascinating. We did some research work recently surveying both CX leaders and consumers, and 62% of consumers told us that they have the right to know when they're interacting with a bot. 63% of CX leaders say they're already making that clear if a consumer is interacting with a person or a bot. But as virtual agents grow in sophistication and take on more of these complex tasks and understand the kind of emotional tonality that you were talking about, Peter, how will the need for transparency around what a consumer or a customer is interacting with evolve alongside that?
Yeah, I think it's very important to be transparent. People want to know that they're interacting with an AI. That also is something we found out that there is some resentment as well around AI, and people are, let's say, nervous, and they want to know. The first reason why it is important to be transparent is I believe that it will become more and more difficult to discern whether you're actually talking to a real human or a great AI. I think we're getting close with anything that's typed. It's going to be very hard to make out the difference between, is this really a human that's in this virtual, this is it an agent responding, or is it a virtual agent responding to my request in the written form? In voice, we're getting there. There's some real great voice generation capabilities out there that can actually transport emotions. So we're getting closer there. You've all heard about deep fakes. I think we will have very soon video capabilities that are so close to humans, it will be harder and harder to discern if this is an AI in that video or if it's actually a person. So because it gets harder and harder to discern, people really want to know. First of all, because some of them are suspicious and they don't want to use AI, or that trust needs to be regained. But there's a more interesting angle to it. There are specific topics where people prefer a human in the conversation, and there are specific topics where people, may have a stronger preference for AI. Let me give you an example. If it's a life and death situation, 82% of our respondents to the survey said they would like to talk to a human, because I think the underlying belief is you can better empathize with me in this situation, right? Yeah. And so that's where clearly the humans lead. But when you have something that is embarrassing or highly confidential, the ratio of people who would prefer to talk to an AI is growing from 9% in the life or death situation to 25% in an AI. So it's not like it's one single answer whether someone would like to talk to an AI or a human. It actually depends on the use case. And in some cases, it's actually better to offer an AI for some constituents. And that's why the transparency here is important.
That's so fascinating. So let's talk a little bit about what all of the implications are here for moving across channels. Organizations today already provide a lot of channels for customers to get service. Consumers certainly appreciate and use multiple channels. But as virtual agents are going to take on more and more complex issues, how do you envision either journey management or channel best practices evolving kind of alongside that?
Yeah. Many of the journey management capabilities today are mostly focused on efficiency and effectiveness. They're looking at the customer journey, from the moment that they're reaching out to the moment that their problem is solved, from an efficiency and effectiveness perspective. And the same applies. I think we need to pull in the emotional state of people. We need to find ways to measure that emotional state on the fly during the conversation, not in a survey. The way how people speak, the way how people interact. So that emotional state is going to be combined with, just volumes and channels and how people are reaching their goals. The second angle is this idea of a channel-less future. And channel-less is a funny word. What we use it for is to describe a future where the experience is consistently personalized, regardless of channel.
Right.
So you will get the same personalized, consistent experience, whether you're going to use a virtual agent on voice or one that's using a digital channel like WhatsApp or text message or chat. So that kind of channelless is giving you the same experience, the same personalization, the same preferences as if across all channels. And finally, the personalization is going to be pervasive, and again across all channels. It's not just the steps of the process; it's actually the way how it is made to accommodate your preferences. Yeah. So that's kind of how I see this evolve. There is the opportunity to go and orchestrate larger and larger journeys because of the ability for journey management to collect more and more data, not just from within a contact center, but from a CRM system, a web page, what have you, and put all of this together and show the flow in terms of volume as well as the experience in terms of emotion.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So one more question before we ask you for some advice for the watchers sort of at the end. So everything that you've been talking about throughout this stream, Peter, it's going to change customer expectations as there's more sophistication on the other end, and they're interacting with these virtual agents. What they expect is going to change, and we also know that people's expectations are shaped by an interaction or an experience with anything. They bring that into the next experience. Different industries, different organizations. For CX leaders who are thinking about these questions, what do they need to be doing to ensure they're not falling behind as consumer expectations kind of continue to advance?
Yes. I think there's this kind of desire for organizations to go and explore more automation on one side, and because it's a strong business case, apparently, to continue to serve the many more conversations that everyone expects to happen in the future. But on the other side, it's about this making sure that we're protecting our brand. We're not saying anything that's an hallucination. There's no toxic content, all of those kind of things. And And so specifically with the arrival of generative AI, there is that fear that was we had a couple of bad examples at the beginning when someone just took generative AI and had to talk to a customer and made some promises that were never company policy. So the first thing is to make sure that you're working with a system that has enough guardrails so that anything created by the generative AI is correct and in company policy. And there's many, many ways to do that. To use generative AI to tap into knowledge bases with approved content, to make sure that you monitor the answers. One way for companies to gain trust today into generative AI is using co-pilots, by the way, because a co-pilot is the same algorithm that essentially is a virtual agent that usually would be customer facing, but now you're making it face the agent and make their life much easier. And the benefit is that whatever the generative AI is producing in terms of a prompt that it would normally just put online, there is now an agent and a pair of eyes and a human brain behind it to say yes, and filter this. And the quality of these new generative algorithms that are coming out is so high that only in very rare cases something's really going wrong, and they can learn from those cases to get even better. And so I think that is a key part of how people are gaining trust by using technologies like co-pilots, where they have, let's say, a human filter, but they still experience the full acceleration and efficiency gains while being as empathetic as possible with their customers.
Yeah. And as you say, it's also just a great way for organizations to dip their toes in and to really understand what these technologies can do in a way that might feel a little bit safer in terms of any, potential concerns.
Right.
So, okay. So final question, Peter. What advice or best practices would you share with folks who are watching as they think about their own strategies relative to evolving from chatbots to virtual agents?
Right. For many people, and that's how you motivated this, little conversation today, Greg. AI is all about automation, and it is the use case that people are most focused on right now. But by far, in a way, is it the only one? I kind of alluded to the use of AI to augment the experience of an employee, like an agent. There's also the use of AI to determine the next best action, to really personalize a conversation, to drive that empathy. And there's also the use of AI to optimize the end-to-end journey on an ongoing basis. We talked about journey management a little bit. Mm-hmm. So there's these 4 different flavors, and you need all of those flavors to be present to truly create exceptional experiences with the use of AI. And so my first recommendation is, when you're thinking about AI, this is not a decision about a point solution. Think about it more as a platform conversation. On which platform are you going to build your AI going forward? Here's the rub. Because you want to be able to learn what's happening in your chatbot when you are routing a conversation or when you're assisting the agent, all of that is connected. You can't drop intent. You want to understand and be continuous in your personalization. All these things need to be together, and in the perfect world, they're built on the same data model. And that's truly why I think this is more of a platform conversation for people. Think about, what is your strategic orchestration platform of the future? And that should actually steer, the way how you go about implementing AI. It's much, much bigger than automating a couple of conversations in the bot.
Yeah, really good advice. Well, that is all the time we have for today. Peter, thank you so much for joining us today and bringing your expertise and your perspective. And thank all of you for joining us. If you would like to learn more about today's topic, you can scan this QR code that's going to pop up on the screen, or you can click the link in the comments. And please be sure to follow Genesys on LinkedIn to get notified about our next live stream episode, new articles in our newsletter, and more. And of course, please like and share the show. We will see you next time on the CX Green Room. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.